Right. Hello and welcome to our Facebook Live. I think we have it working, and I'm going to ask my beautiful assistant if she will have a look and see if she can connect to it. That's it. Well done. And then it should say in your notifications. Excellent. So if you turn the volume up just so I can hear that that's working, and I'll say something now and it should come out on your iPad. Okay. Can you hear me now? So if you turn the volume up. Hey! Right. We're working. Let's just give it a second or so to for people to join. I think we've got a whole 6 so far. So hopefully there'll be a few more joining. That's probably my mum, my grandmother, my mother-in-law, and my wife. So fingers crossed we get a couple more. So let's play this into start slideshow. So hopefully you can all see the title page with a nice delphinium at the back. That's called Sandpiper. And you should be able to put comments in. There we go. So if you type a comment, then excellent. Thank you, Paul Dibley. It all seems to be working. So what we'll do is I think we'll make a start because we'll be recording this and then you'll be able to watch it back as many times as you like. And if you watch it more than once, I think I would doubt people's sanity sometimes. So look, it's all about growing delphiniums from seed today. There was a good question in yesterday's sort of gardener's question time as part of the virtual flower show about why people can't grow delphiniums easily. So this is actually going to answer quite a few of those questions and also enable you to get a really good set of plants going really cheaply and wow all your neighbours with it. So let's get going. So a bit like the question yesterday, Mark, please, why can't I grow delphiniums? And I hear it time and time again. I go off to do lectures at gardening clubs. Well, back in the day when you can actually go out and travel and actually see people. And this is the answer why. So there was a lovely chap called Frank Reinhelt back in the 50s and 60s. And he developed a strain of delphiniums called Pacific Giants. And back in the day, they were a very, very nice plant. If you look at them, not the best of photographs. It's from 1960 or something or another, I think. Yeah. And you can see him working on some plants. If you look at those delphiniums, they're lovely, nice spires, packed with flowers. There's no gaps. And I think there's another picture of him somewhere. There we go. You can see just blocks and blocks of colour. And he developed delphiniums by alternately hand crossing 2 of his best plants in a colour range and then alternately then selfing it. So he fixed the colours. So he developed what we call a seed strain. And you will see these today for sale in garden centres and nurseries. Cultivars such as Astolat, King Arthur, Bluebird, Guinevere. Basically, they were named after Knights of the Round Table. And you see, what's the problem then, Mark? Well, the problem is this, is back in California, where he worked, hence the name Pacific Giants, they had views of the Pacific. There was lots of water, lots of sunshine, and he was able to grow 2 crops of flowers every year. Now, what you've noticed is he never actually checked that they would come back the next year, i.e. be reliably perennial. Some of them were. Some do come back even today, but not reliably so. And I would recommend that you try and avoid the Pacific giants. Okay, in America it's kind of different. They're not perennial really anyway, in that they tend to flower themselves to death, so they don't last too long. So he did a wonderful job. Unfortunately, it's still the most widely available seed strain on the market. And on the left of the screen now, you can see a Pacific giant. Trade's description really, because it's not that giant. To be fair, it was grown in a relatively small pot. I think this was Guinevere or Astellat, one or the other, pink with a white eye. But as well as the fact that they're not reliably perennial, you can also see on the right-hand side, there is a floret at the bottom of an English raised named Delphinium. I think it's Rosemary Brock, and compare it to the floret above. So not only perennial, but a nicer thing. So what's happened is, since I think it was about 1964, he stopped his work in breeding Delphiniums. The result is that people have successively saved seed, but without an eye on the quality control, and the quality of the seed is, as a result, has tailed off. So not particularly good plants, or not always, and definitely not reliably perennial. So there you go. And just as a reminder, right, it's just to bring the message home really. California, lovely, and England. Okay, two different places. To re-emphasize it, if we can do it, California and England. And of course, I think we might have a little bit of lag on the thing. So apologies if I'm talking about something and you're not quite seeing it. It's taken a few seconds to come through on my beautiful assistant's iPad. So I was told that's sexist, Mark. You've got to have different pictures. Where's the Diet Coke ad? So there they are, California style and England style. So I shall step off of that, because you will see that picture now for a while in your mind's eye. And just as a quick extra, I can see that my wife can now see Diet Coke break California and England, and she's going to have nightmares now. Great, we're on to the Delphinium bud. So I was going to say that the name Delphinium comes from the Greek for dolphin, which is Delphin, I believe. And you can kind of see a little bit maybe why they would think that, in that they've got the spur, it's called the spur, at the back of the bud, looking a bit like the tail of a dolphin, and the body obviously with the bud. And there we go. So I think that maybe had a little too much Retsina, but it gives you the idea. There's a couple of plugs, as you might imagine, as we go through. So here's the first one. If you're really into growing some Delphiniums, I can't recommend joining the Delphinium Society highly enough. It's a tenner a year for UK membership, and it's I think it's £15 abroad. Yeah, just being prompted. And one of the biggest benefits of being a member is that the year you join, you get a free packet of mixed Delphinium seeds, all raised and seed safe from the very best Delphiniums. And you also get the annual yearbook, which is full of all things Delphinium, how to grow them, sow seeds, take cuttings, all kinds of stuff. So really good value for 10 or 15 quid, depending on where you live. So growing from seed. So I've talked an awful lot really so far about what not to grow. So let's get on with maybe a little bit about what you can do. And so the first thing is that the seed that we sell from the society is we save it from a named cultivar. Now, a named cultivar is basically a very high quality Delphinium plant that's been given a specific name. And the only way to get more of those plants is by taking a cutting from it and rooting it. And it's vegetative propagation. Okay, if you grow a plant from seed, in this case Faust, you should correctly label it as X Faust. Okay, so it's seed, say from Faust. And you can see there in the picture, I took a floret from each of, I don't know how many there are, like a dozen different plants that were from it. And you can see there's quite a bit of variability. Some of those plants were better than others, believe you me. The closest to Faust is the one that's sort of back left, the sort of 10 o'clock position. That was Faust. Yeah, so they don't really come true from seed. Okay, sometimes you can sow seed from a plant and you will get something looking like the mother plant you saved it from. but not reliably so. And one of my pet kind of whinges, if you like, are people on the internet selling plants as Faust, but it isn't Faust. It's actually grown from seed from Faust, and they're not the same thing. Okay, so it just makes me really, really cross. And I've fallen for it in the past. I bought a plant of Spindrift, I think, off of eBay. Looked nothing like eBay. When I asked them, so, oh, we raised it from seed. Well, okay, then it's not Spindrift. Okay, so move on. So the first thing you need to do to successfully grow plants from seed is to get some really good quality seeds. And most important is to keep it in the fridge. So Delphinium seed, as you can just about see them in that packet, it's quite small. It's about the size of a pinhead, give or take. Not very big, and it goes off quite quickly. But if you keep it in the fridge, it will last a good few years. Okay, and as long as you keep it in something airtight and dry and cool, it'll last you a few years. The society, the Delphinium Society, produce a seed list every year. We have 1 or 2 species on the list, and then lots of seed saved from plants, named cultivars. And we also have seed that is the result of hybridizing as well. So in this case, one of our members has taken plant A, crossed it with plant B, and you can then start to predict a little bit more about what you're going to get. Now, just before we move on from this, I should also point out that you do get seed strains as well. And if someone has worked really hard, as Frank Reinhelt and the stuff at the start, you can reliably sell open pollinated seed that will mostly come to a colour type. But that's the work of a good few years of breeding to be able to do that. And also you can get to a point where you can cross 2 known plants and also have reliable results. And if you have a look at the website, that's my dog having a good snuggle down into her bed. Yeah, delphinium.co.nz. It used to be called Dowderswell's Delphiniums. I think she trades now as New Zealand Delphiniums. They're hybridized, and if you buy one of the color lines, you will get plants of that color. Okay, but that's the difference between seed strains and seeds being sown from named plants. So, with the Delphinium Society seed, they don't necessarily come true to the mother, as we've been saying, but you do get some really lovely plants. This is a seedling, just taken in a friend's garden. She grows quite a few plants for me. Same again, another lovely seedling, a pink double. And I'm probably, you can hear me speaking and you're still looking at maybe the kind of mauvey lilac flower, but never mind, there we go, it's changed. So just stepping on from that, there's another picture. A very good friend, Jackie, and she dug up her lawn for me, which was very kind of her. And we planted out several hundred Delphinium seedlings. And to illustrate some of the points, actually, this is all from hand-crossed seed. So the whites that you can see, hopefully right now on the right of the screen, there's a big block of them. They were raised by crossing 2 white Delphiniums. We had some lovely plants. The variability, they were all white with a white eye to the plant. But they did vary a little bit. Some were tall, maybe 6'6". Others were a little bit shorter, maybe 4.5 feet. And that actually is the typical range for Delphiniums across the board. The short one is pretty much 4.5 feet. Big one, 6.5, 7. On the left, excuse me, losing my voice already. Thank God for that, you're saying. There was a cross for some purples you can see in the background, and then some crosses made between some of the sort of pastel shade plants as well. So 1 or 2 of these we've selected, and I'm hoping to actually name one of the white ones in due course, but nonetheless, lovely, lovely plants, right? Not cultivar quality, but like most of the way there. And of course, the Delphinium Society seed, it's I think you get 30 seeds in a packet, £3. Should easily get 15 to 20 plants raised from that. It's really economical way to grow seeds. So how do we do it, Mark? So you're all going to rush out, find some seeds and grow them. Right. there are a few things you can do with seed sowing, and I won't say everything I would sow this way, but nearly all the seeds I plant follow this sort of pattern. So the first thing is get yourself some really good quality seed compost. I use one called Levington's F2. Other composts are available, but if you can, try and buy a seed compost because it has very low levels of nutrient, which is just perfect for seedlings at the very start of their lives. I then take this compost and I mix it, give or take, I don't get buckets out and measure it, but about 3 parts compost to 1 part perlite. And the perlite is really, really important because it opens up the compost, okay? Some compost can be very, very fine grained, very stodgy. And the problem with that is it holds the moisture very, very well and can actually help the rots develop and seedlings damp off and so on. The other thing I nearly always do, unless it's like a pea or a bean or something really big, is I will cover the seeds with vermiculite. You can see the vermiculite. It looks like I'm sowing cucumbers and courgettes in the picture, but it's very clean, it's sterile. Thoroughly recommend using that. The other thing I always do with seeds is once I set them, as soon as I got them ready, I put them in a tray full of water and water from the bottom. So the thing to do, especially once they've germinated, is if you do have to water them again, only water them by standing the pot in some water. If you water over the top, you get the dampness around the stems of the seedlings, and it can encourage damping off and all those sort of nasty fungal diseases. And the other thing with Delphiniums is they don't like it too hot. So I would say a maximum of 20 degrees C or 68 Fahrenheit. That's plenty enough. So that's at the point where you've got your seeds sown and they're going to start to germinate. They take about, and it does vary quite a bit, between 10 and 30-ish days to germinate. Some plants, some forms of Delphiniums, they germinate quicker, like nearly all done in 2 weeks. Some others, I've sown, I germination test all the society seed. You don't actually get very many coming up until week 3 or 4. So they do take a long time. And even the ones that germinate earlier, don't throw the compost away because you can usually get a few more seeds that just happen to germinate later. And you never know, they might be the best ones. Probably I've not mentioned time of year yet. In the UK, and everything I'm going to talk about is UK. I don't have experience growing in North America or in colder climates. I live down in Hampshire, which is in the southern part of England. And if I sow my seeds in late February, early March, and grow them reasonably well, I will have flowers in August and September of the same year. So they're quite quick. You only get 1 flower per plant, but it's typically the kind of like a full-size spike. You can easily get a flower that's 3 feet tall. That's not unusual. They're quite impressive things. So, okay, so we've sown our seed, we've watered it, we've kept it not too hot. Good place to germinate is under the bench of a greenhouse. I once gave some seeds to a friend and he said, "That seed you gave me, it was rubbish." I put it on the top shelf of my greenhouse, and of course this time of year a greenhouse roof area is easily going to get to 40 degrees C, and basically killed them. And I'm being told that I'm waffling on too much, so I better speed up. There we go. There's a pot of seeds. I generally use a biggish pot, 4 or 5 inches across. Those sort of house plants you buy, like a half depth pot, they're quite wide. They're brilliant for it. 30 or 40 seeds in one of those. And generally, if they germinate in around about 2 weeks, certainly by 4 weeks, maybe even 3 and a bit, they're ready to prick out. As usual, I'm too busy, and then I've left it far too late, and you can start to see the root structure in the picture that's developed. And here's a couple. The one on the right, I've even left that too late, right? By the time you've got 1 true Delphinium leaf, you can see they've actually got quite a few roots already forming. So rather than what I can show you in these pictures, I would recommend that once the cotyledons, you know, the seed leaves, the first couple of leaves that come out, once they've swelled up, I would prick them out. I've been doing that pretty good this year and reliably with my vegetable growing, and it barely knows that it's been moved. The other thing I do is to use fairly small pots. So I find a 7 centimetre square pot is easily big enough for a little tiny seedling. Certainly not any bigger. And then you can see that probably about 4 weeks, 5 weeks from pricking out, it's made a nice root ball in the compost, and it's ready to, well, it's up to you at that point what you do. You can either plant them in the ground, which I do, or you can pot them up, which I also do from time to time. And even in a fairly small pot, like about a 2 litre pot, you can actually grow quite a nice flower. The only challenge, of course, with pots is watering, because you'll be watering them absolutely every day. Okay. In a smaller pot, they will flower a bit sooner, maybe even July from early March sowing. Going to move on. There aren't very many comments. I did forget at the start. I was going to say I will do a prize for the best comment. And we actually there was one comment early on which said it's all working fine, Mark, because it's difficult to see it when you're just here and chattering away. But the best comment, I will send out a couple of packets of seeds to whoever comes up with it. Okay. Right. What do we got next? Well, if you're going to plant them in the ground, you need to make sure you've got some well-prepared ground, and Delphiniums are quite big plants. So this was our garden this morning. Or lunchtime actually, I nipped out and just took a few pictures. So these are the Delphiniums now. It's middle of April, growing away nicely, and there's no slug control being put down at all. Okay, so I don't know who's doing it. Maybe the birds are eating them. I could have, of course, slug-resistant Delphiniums, which is also a possibility, or maybe we're just lucky. But yeah, planting them in the soil definitely gives you better results than pots, and obviously a lot less work. And the only other comment I can make on all of this really is, if you've got it, mulch the plants once you've planted them out, because that will help not only feed the soil, which will help your plants grow better, it's also going to keep the moisture in. And these Delphiniums, if you think a month ago these were barely out of the ground, and here we are now, a month on, they're about a foot tall, I should think, and they're going to be full of flower by the middle to late June. So they've got to grow quickly, so they need food, and they're going to need moisture as well. Oh, okay, that's good. Thank you for the comment. And let's step on. Right, so I said at the start that if you plant in the UK anyway, middle of March, early March, you have a full-size flower in August and September. Yeah, and you can see on the right now, hopefully there is a picture of a Delphinium coming. That was a flower in August from an early March sowing. And that's the kind of thing that you can expect. Lovely plant. Obviously, in the first year, you're only going to get one flower per plant, but in subsequent years, as you can see on the left, there are multi-stems. Maybe in the second year, I might thin a plant, so there's only maybe 3 stems. But as the plant gets more and more mature, you can easily have 5, 6, 7 stems. Fewer the stems, the bigger the flower generally, so it's up to you. If you thin out some of the weedier stems, you'll get bigger flowers on the ones that are left. So, going to hop on to dealing with a few problems. So actually, just before we move on from that with the seed growing, before we talk about our friend Cyril there, I see a lot of people asking questions on the Delphinium Society Facebook group, which incidentally is completely free to join. Well worth a look. I see people using grow lights, sowing in like December and early January. I mean, go for it. Do whatever you like. But it's, for me anyway, it's an awful lot of work. And certainly where we are, using sowing in February, early March, maybe a little bottom heat just to start them. But of course, you can have them in your house just at ambient room temperature until they've germinated. And then they are hardy, so a cold greenhouse is fine. yeah, just, or even a cold frame possibly, just to get them swelled up, prick them out, grow them on. Brilliant. So the story with the slug is we've just been to see an estate agent to buy a house, and he said, "Oh, most of my clients get to call me Simon." So there we go, Simon the slug. Yeah. So slug control, a lot of people do leave it too late. Valentine's Day is the time to start slug preparation. So you think you're getting into the middle of February, and very much often, well, not this year, but often, the weather starts to warm up a little bit, and Slugsy comes out because it's Valentine's Day for slugs. And that's when they start to breed. So out and get on with the slug control if you need to. The product called Slug Clear is sadly no longer available, although that's probably a good thing because metaldehyde, which is the active ingredient, is obviously poisonous to wildlife and pets and small children. But it was also getting into the watercourse. Yeah, I'm being told I've got 3 minutes left. Well, we can carry on a little bit if you've got the time. I use the organic slug pellets if I have to. I do use them for growing show plants, for going to the Chelsea Flower Show inside the greenhouse, just to make sure that those early shoots aren't fodder for slugs. I'm sure you've seen this with slug pellets in people's gardens. The idea is the slug, it climbs to the top, trips, falls over, breaks its neck on the way down. It's coming, the picture eventually, you'll see it in a second. And here's a picture I took at one of the kind of antique garden paraphernalia shops, I suppose. And I'd love a little bit of the slug death that hopefully you'll get in a second. Hurrah, it's arrived. Of course, there are other ways to deal with the slug, and that's a 7-iron into your next door neighbour's garden, especially if you don't like them. The picture will be coming in a second. It's actually quite disconcerting that there's quite such a lag on it, but never mind. And my assistant is telling me to point out that the slug pellets, if you're going to use them, you don't need many. And a very, very light sprinkling is really all you need. And of course, nature itself creates often the best slug control. So if you can encourage wildlife into your garden, the birds like them. And if you've got the space for a little pond is fabulous. We had one, it was only about 3 feet across, something like that. At one time we counted well over 30 frogs in it. So they also like slugs. Then of course there is another form of pest. It's called children with footballs and broken stems. So there is a way of also dealing with them, which is to put them in a cage. Okay, and keep the balls in the cage, and hopefully that picture will arrive with you soon. It's a little bit old now. The kids will kill me because they're 16 and 13, and having pictures of you when you're about 4 or something. So that's basically it on seed sowing. Have we had any more comments, Anne? Oh, Vicky Barras. Okay, my Delphs are growing in pots and have got one stem only. Should I take the growing tip off to get more stems? No, it's a good question. I wouldn't do that personally, because what's going to happen under the soil, and it's under the soil that's the important bit, is that your Delphinium is building a nice woody crown. And what you're going to do is, by allowing that flower to mature and flower under the soil, the plant's building a crown. And what it's also doing is building little tiny, I'm waving all my arms around here and you can't see it obviously, as you're getting new shoots form. If you cut it off now, what's going to happen is you will get some new shoots. They will come, but they're also going to be very small. So what you want to do is let that plant flower, develop all those new eyes, we call them, underground on the crown of the plant. And as soon as that flower starts to look tatty, I would cut the flower off, and then you will get a second flower in, and the shoots will therefore be that much bigger. Okay, but of course then you need to keep moving the plot up, the plant up into a larger pot as you go. Minimum, yeah, another good question. So the minimum temperature to germinate Delphiniums, Well, unknown really. Um, I, Gordon West is the chairman of the Delphinium Society. He used to sow some outside in a pot covered with grit and leave it out in the winter. And by March, they would have germinated and be ready to prick out. I think they're going to be very slow if you're under probably 10 degrees. I am lucky enough to have a heated propagator. I turn the thermostat down so it's at no more than 20, and I will use that on occasion. But this year, I actually germinated lots and lots of seeds in our house and just had them on the kitchen worktop. I wasn't popular, but you know, that's life. Rick, hello, Rick. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm trying to read the question out. Right, if you keep it on the screen. In Boston, Massachusetts, should I start feeding my plants coming up from last year this early in the season or wait a bit? Yeah, absolutely. Feed them, Rick. Um, this time of year, a liquid feed can be a good idea for pots or plants growing in the ground because that food's immediately available to them. You can also use like a pelleted fertilizer. In the UK, we get something called Vitax Q4. On the NPK ratios, it's at the K end of life, and it's higher up there. So it's for flowering, to encourage flowering. If you're feeding now, just with the foliage there, like my pictures, maybe in the few slides back now, a balanced feed. Yeah, so something like Vitax 111, or where the NPK ratios are broadly in keeping. Margaret Ford, another question. When's the best time to divide a delphinium that's a few years old? Okay, well, good question. If you're going to do it, I would do it when you first start to see some growth coming. But delphiniums are actually different to a lot of herbaceous perennials. So, you know, I grow Helianthus lemon queen, Veronicastrums, hardy geraniums. Divide them away to your heart's content. But the very best way with delphiniums is not to divide them, but to actually take the smaller shoots off of the plant with a knife right next to the crown where it's growing and root it. And lots of different ways to do that. You can either stand them in water, which I do for a while. Perlite, stand them in neat perlite that's in a saucer of water is probably the best way. Some people use a compost mix with lots of grit, very open mixture. But I don't really recommend dividing delphiniums, but cutting, taking, fabulous. Is there any miss? We've done them all? Done all the questions? Yeah. Okay, you're all still watching, which is amazing. So thank you ever so much. What I was, if I was going to run out of time, and I've overshot, I had a few desert island delphiniums. So these aren't seed raised as such. Obviously, they were very, very originally, but some nice ones to look out for, or to buy seeds from. You should get some good plants. There's one called Beryl Burton. I'm hoping to have seed on the Society seed list next year for this one. Purple Velvet is a lovely purple delphinium. I realise now that I'm going to have to slow right down because the pictures are coming up behind, but never mind. Purple Velvet, lovely, lovely delphinium. One of my favourites is called Gossamer. It's quite an old delphinium now, very, very difficult to come by. But if you can, it flowers early. So I use it on Chelsea stands just for that reason alone. Raised by Tom Cowan, lots of lovely delphiniums raised by him, and also germinates quite quickly as well. So a good one to look out for. Blue Nile, I mean, just the colour alone, it has a few other faults in the plant, but it is a fabulous, fabulous thing with such a, I don't know, what would you call it? Marine blue. It's actually even nicer than the picture, to be honest, in real life. Yeah, royal blue, I'm being told. Yeah. Spindrift is another fabulous plant, also raised by Tom Cowan. Very similar to Gossamer. It's early, a water garden merit plant. I grow lots and lots of Spindrift, so I really recommend that one. If you're looking for a white with a white eye, plant of Elizabeth Cook. Fabulous plant raised by Alan Cook in Chandler's Ford, named after his wife. Others that are similar, Jill Curley, another really nice plant. Or look out, there's a seed strain for some really good white ones. They're called Centurion White. And it's well worth looking out for those. They're quite expensive because they're hand pollinated. They're like a pound a seed or something silly, but well worth a look. Oh, went the wrong way. Got gossamer in twice. There you go. I remember. So it's from a different talk, and I borrowed the slides. So I suppose if I only can have one Delphinium, I'd take gossamer. Oh, I've overshot. Beg your pardon. There was one last slide. Hopefully you can see it. Excuse me, losing my voice. And it's another view of my friend's garden with lots and lots of Delphiniums in, all raised from seed. If you've got the space, you can easily create something like this for yourselves, and just for a few pounds worth of seeds. And I'll just leave this on the screen for a few seconds, some useful links. So delphinium-society.co.uk. You can go there, you can buy seeds from the society, or join if you wanted to. Biggest supplier of Delphiniums probably in the world of named cultivars cuttings. They Blackmore and Langdon. Delphinium.co.nz for seeds raised by hand pollination, and also in the UK, Home Farm Plants. Look out for them at plant shows, and also they open their nursery as well, so you can go and pay them a visit somewhere around the M40, I think. Yeah. So that's the end. I will just hold open for another minute or so. If there are any more questions, just pop them in the comments. I think we've answered them all. I'm really sorry if we haven't. Oh, prize, yeah, prize. So I think Vicky Barras probably should win the prize for the best question. Okay, there were several, I think, weren't there? Yeah. Okay, and I'll tell you what, we'll do 2 prizes as well. So Margaret will send you a packet as well. Okay. So last dance, last chance. If you have any comments, go for it. And there you go. Fabulous. 10 of you at least have stayed with us for the whole thing. We'll make the recording available as well. I will save this. So thank you all ever so much for watching and listening. And hopefully there'll be an awful lot more Delphiniums being grown in the future. Enjoy the rest of the day. Happy gardening, folks. Cheers.